Hello guys and gals, this is What's Politics here, and this is going to be part 3 of What If Bell Was a Dragonoid. And now, in the last part, Bell was ambushed by the Loki familia's assassins. Before one of them could essentially stab him in the back, he gets drop-kicked by Eyes, who just flew over to him. And, well, they quickly get rid of the assassins which were sent to get him. After that, Bell and Eyes, well, sort of talk to each other, figuring out who they are and from what families they are, as Bell learns that Eyes is the daughter of the Golden Dragon, and Eyes learns that Bell is, well, the son of the Fire Dragon Empress. And yeah, after that, they hear some rustling in the bushes, or in the forest. As they turn around to meet, they see the God of Thunder, Thor himself, along with his familia. Now, Thor explains to them as most of the Norse gods weren't inclined to, well, go up against dragons, and then some of them actually even helped the dragons, although sadly they were killed. But, as he explains to them, that the Northern Realms are one of the few places currently, well, on the continent which house dragons. And, well, with that being said, Bell and Eyes simply say goodbye to Thor after gaining some useful information. That information being that most of the Loki and Freya familias are in Arario, although there are still some, well, essentially some small pockets which are currently going around killing what remains of the dragons and wyverns in, well, the Sultanate. And yeah, and before Bell and Eyes go to the Sultanate, they take care of a small problem which a village had. That being that there was a gigantic leviathan in a lake. Yeah, safe to say that Bell and Eyes took care of that rather quickly. And that's essentially that. As we left off with Bell and Eyes traveling towards the Sultanate. And now, as we go to Bell and Eyes traveling, they're currently talking. Simply about what sort of weapons they use, how did they get their armor, and all that. Essentially bonding. Since after all, they are the last true two remaining Dragonoids. There are essentially a couple of other dragons which are like alive, but the elder dragons are essentially the Golden Dragon Emperor along with the Black Dragon Emperor, which is the same Black Dragon in the anime, which killed both Odin and Hera's whole familia. Yeah, this also happens here, as Odin and Freya, that is Odin and Hera, weren't exactly inclined on having dragons which can kill gods be flying around, although they failed to kill the Black Dragon, just like in the anime. And yeah, as Eyes and Bell simply, well, are talking, they see something. That something being in a whole caravan of adventurers and, well, merchants slaughtered. Now, at first they got no clue who did this, but that's when they hear something. As Bell quickly turns his head just in time, quickly turns around, just in time to block an incoming attack from a Minotaur. And yeah, as Deku gets essentially, well, he gets pushed back quite a bit. As Bell is surprised because usually Minotaurs weren't a challenge to him at all. Although these Minotaurs actually came from a dungeon. Because yeah, most monsters have their counterparts which are in the dungeons. So yeah, you have wild Minotaurs, then you have monster Minotaurs. Yeah, that's essentially how I'm going to be doing this. And yeah, has essentially a whole horde, that is, well, not a horde, a group of like 20 Minotaurs pops up out of the forest with a large black one, well, leading them. And well, Bell simply gets out his sword and then engulfs it in flames. with eyes doing the same to her, well, rapier, although the only thing being that, well, she encases it in light magic. And after that, they begin to fight the Minotaurs. As the first group of Minotaurs, that is, they sort of split off. 7 of them go after Eyes, while the rest of them go after Bell, although their leader is staying in the back, simply watching as this goes on. Now then, as Bell quickly uses his sword to, well, essentially cut off the head of 2 Minotaurs, but that's when his armor gets hit from behind, that being a Minotaur which is essentially using a gigantic club. Now, as Bell turns around and just, well, punches the Minotaur right in its stomach, as the Minotaur feels pain from that and, well, staggers a bit, but before he can do anything else, it gets cut in half, all the way from the head to the ass. And yeah, after that, the Minotaurs which saw this, a couple of them are, well, scared, not terrified, but yeah. Although that's when their leader gets involved, and the weapons which their leader has is 2 giant axes, so double wielding them. And now, as their leader simply jumps up to go ahead and try and kill Bell, Bell actually activates, well, one of his Dragonoid abilities, which I actually forgot to say in, well, part 1, when I was explaining what his abilities are. Essentially, he can use a type of reinforcing magic, or, well, just from his Dragonoid species. So he becomes a lot stronger and, well, a lot more durable. And has the Minotaur, or the head Minotaur, which is actually like 4 feet taller than Bell, so like 1.2 meters or 1.1 meters. Yeah, Bell is able to actually withstand that attack and actually even pushes back the Minotaur leader. And just as he does that, 2 Minotaurs simply fly out and, well, crash into the leader. And those 2 Minotaurs came from Eyes, who just finished dealing with the other 4 which had attacked her. And now, out of the originally 21 Minotaurs which were there, with 20 regular ones and, well, 1 which was their leader, now there are only 11 left of, well, the Minotaur warriors and then their leader. And now, at this point, Bell charges forth. He gets intercepted by 3 Minotaurs, although he quickly gets, well, rid of them, using his great sword, God's Bane, to, well, slice off 2 of them from their stomachs all the way to the other one's head. And after that, he uses his, well, Dragonoid strength to punch a hole through the 3rd one. And after that, the leader simply comes up behind him and actually gets a slash on his back. But, just like I said, the armor which Bell is, well, currently wearing is, yeah, in all honesty, the only weapons which can probably break through it would be the ones which Hephaestus make, or any sort of other legendary weapons which were made either by extremely powerful smiths, gods, or elder dragons. But the kinetic energy, or the force, Bell still feels it, and that force actually is able to crack one of his ribs. Not fully, but Bell still feels a bit of pain. And yeah, at that point, Bell simply turns around, throws his greatsword away, and then starts punching the leader of the Minotaurs again and again. And yeah, after about half a minute of simply him punching the Minotaur, yeah, Bell does a final move, which is essentially he jumps in the air, whacks the Minotaur's head with his tail, and then after that, he takes both of his hands, essentially makes them into, well, let's say this, he essentially jumps up and makes both of his hands into, well, fuck, how do you say that in English? He essentially uppercuts him. There we go. as the Minotaur's head after that one simply gets torn off its body. With the other Minotaurs, essentially, that after they saw that, are pretty scared, but before they can do anything to Bell, Ice comes from behind them and cuts off all their heads. And that's when every single one of the Minotaurs, well, turns into dust. And well, the only thing which is left are their magical crystals. As Bell and I simply look at these magical crystals because they know what they are, but they just never knew that they came like this. And yeah, as soon as both of them do touch these crystals, something weird happens. The crystals begin to crack, and after that, they completely disappear with magical energy simply, well, going into Bell and Eyes. And yeah, this is how I'm going to make how Dragonoids and dragons get their power. That is, no, this is how Dragonoids essentially get XP to level up. When they kill up essentially opponents, they can absorb the magical crystals, well, magical energy. As the crystals gets completely destroyed, and the energy which was in it gets absorbed by the Dragonoids. And the way the dragons gained essentially XP was by eating and killing enemies. Yeah. And so, after that was done, they simply go ahead and keep on to the Sultanate. But that's when Bale actually notices something, as they're passing by one of the essentially carts which the merchants had. He sees something which makes him a bit pissed. He sees essentially his mother's kingdom. Yeah, he sees one of the royal guards' armor sets, which were essentially taken from him after he died. And yeah, the adventurers and merchants which were here probably were the ones who went ahead and robbed the dead of all their equipment, which was, by dragon standards, dishonorable and essentially heretical. Yeah, although the gods were like, nah, just take their armor, that's yours now. Yeah. And after that, Bel simply burns the armor, because he will not be letting the armor which was worn by essentially the most elite knights of his mother, he will not let that armor be worn by the enemy. And yeah, after that, they simply go ahead and go essentially keep on their way towards the Sultanate. Although that's when they notice something yet again. That being a weird tower which goes a couple of 100 feet in the air. They don't know what exactly it is, but they see something. At the base of the tower, they see several flags, and those flags, well, the Loki familia, they have their insignia on it. They also see several adventurers, and something which Bell immediately notices. He also sees several dozen soldiers of, well, the Ice Dragon Emperor. He sees several dozen of his own soldiers, because, like I said, all of the 12 Elder Dragons, they had their own kingdoms and empires and confederations. But the gods and their familias, along with all of the humans which followed those gods, yeah, they went on a massive purging spree and killed quite a lot of dragons. Well, almost all of them actually. But yeah, as Bell and I see this, yeah, they simply go ahead and, well, make a plan on how to both free all of the soldiers there and also, well, figure out the most painful ways on how to kill every single part of the Loki familia, which was located there, that being that small group. And yeah, As Bell and Eyes simply start moving forward, Eyes takes out her wings and, well, gets into the air. As she essentially goes after several archers which were on, well, at the middle of the tower. Now, as the archers weren't expecting any sort of attack, because at this point the familias of the gods were everywhere, although the Loki and Freya familia were only located in small groups in, well, these parts of the area, because they had smaller familias which were in greater numbers, essentially at the border of the northern kingdom, of the northern realms. Although the southern realms, where the Sultanate was, that was, well, quite a long way. Because essentially how this continent is this. The northern realms are obviously in the north. And now there is one single checkpoint to get from essentially the middle realms to the northern realms. And that checkpoint is where essentially a fortress city is located at, which is, well, under the control of, well, not the Freya or Loki familia, but it's rather under the control of the Hephaestus familia. Because this fortress city is, well, essentially surrounded by mountains on two sides. And these mountains have a bunch of mines in them which get, well, ores. Iron, steel, copper, bronze, essentially every single type of ore which the blacksmiths of the Hephaestus familia used to make weapons, gear, armor, and all that. So yeah, and well, after the Middle Realms, which are essentially the largest realm, you have the Southern Realms, and then you also have the Eastern Realms. The Eastern Realms are essentially where all of the Japanese and Asian gods are located at, while the Southern Realms are essentially, well, the Egyptian gods and all that stuff. And then, right after the Southern Realms, there is essentially a portal, and that portal brings you to another continent. That continent being Rorio. Because, yeah, the gods essentially started off in the same continent. Well, actually, wait, yeah. The gods came from the same continent where the dragons did. The main difference being that the gods, well, found another one, that being Rorio. And as they went to Rorio, there weren't any dragons there. So their power was, well, unopposed for a rather long time. But after the Black Dragon was defeated, yeah, he was banished to Rorio. And that's how he essentially killed the Zeus and Hera familia. Or at least a part of them. But when the war against the dragons happened, yeah, everything sort of went to hell. But enough about that. That's pretty much a bit of lore and how the world is located at. And also, Rorio is smaller than the continent where Bell and Eyes are currently at. And yeah, as we go back to essentially Eyes, she rushes in using her speed to essentially cut off the heads of the first two archers, as the other three archers which are located there, or one of the archers, simply turns around to see that one of its comrades is missing her head. Before he can say anything, yeah, Eyes simply comes from behind and then stabs him in the gut, or in the back. And after that, she pulls out her rapier and then, well, throws it at the other two adventurers, impaling both of them on the head, because they were essentially behind each other, or yeah. After that, she signals for Bell that he can move, and Bell does exactly that. He uses his, well, flame magic, or dragon flame magic, or dragon fire magic to essentially, yeah, he creates several spears of fire or lances, because they were quite a bit bigger than spears, and also thicker. And yeah, as he sensed that, every single time one of those lances hits a human, or an adventurer, or anything really, it does an explosion. And at this same time, Bell actually sent smaller daggers to go right where the restraints on all the soldiers of the Ice Dragon were. And now, the 30 or so soldiers are now freed. They immediately go ahead and take the weapons of the adventurers, which were essentially exploded by Bell, and then start fighting against the normal soldiers of the Loki familia. Because, yeah, the Loki familia had like the familia, which were like the most powerful of, which were essentially adventurers, but they also had like their own personal armies. So yeah, it was essentially 30 of the Ice Dragon's warriors against 60 of the Loki familia soldiers. And just as the Loki familia soldiers were thinking that they're going to win this, from up above, Ice simply comes around using an area of effect magic spell, which essentially throws shards of light everywhere. And after that, about 20 or so of the soldiers are dead. And this time, Bell rushes towards the adventurers. There's about 7 of them. And 6 of them are level 2, and the 7th one is a level 3. And yeah, with that being said, Bell quickly takes care of the level 2 ones, but the level 3, who has a spear, gives him a bit more trouble, as this level 3 adventurer also knows how to use ice magic. And yeah, as the adventurer tries to essentially freeze Bell, Bell uses his fire magic. And yeah, after that, simply burns the adventurer to a crisp. After that, Bell hears, essentially clanging of armor and boots coming from the tower. This is coming from, essentially the staircase which goes into the earth. And yeah, if you guys haven't figured it out, this is a smaller tower of a dungeon. Because yeah, like in all of my other What If Bell, yeah, there is more than one dungeon. They're located all across the continents. Although in Arario there's the largest one, like always. And yeah, has now 7 more adventurers come up, along with 30 soldiers. But these adventurers are, simply put, a bit more high-ranking, with now most of them being level 3s, and 2 of them being level 4. And yeah, as Bell takes out his sword, simply prepared to fight against them, as the adventurers are simply saying, this is going to be easy, along with the soldiers. But that's when the reinforcements arrive. The 30 soldiers of the Ice Dragon, which none of them died, because, yeah, the dragons had smaller armies than the gods, but those armies were much, much better trained. As they simply arrived, with all of them having different types of weapons, but still being rather good at using them, as well as eyes. So yeah, the numbers were now evened out. Well, not exactly, it was in the favor of Bell and Eyes. And yeah, as the normal soldiers simply charged forth to essentially fight the soldiers of the Ice Dragon, because yeah, the soldiers of the Ice Dragon actually stayed in place as Bell and Eyes charged the adventurers. And the 30 soldiers of the Loki familia charged, the normal soldiers of Bell and Eyes. And yeah, as that happened, Eyes quickly takes care of 3 of the adventurers, and Bell, using his greatsword, simply chops off the head of, two more of them. Now, this leaves only the 2 level 4s. One of the level 4s is essentially an adventurer which focuses more on a, stealthier assassination type. So essentially a assassin adventurer or a thief. And yeah, he has most of his, how do you say it, stat points in agility. And now, as he uses that to go up against Ice, rather stupid idea, because Ice is actually faster than him. And the second adventurer actually focuses more on a berserker type, essentially like an Amazon, although he's a male, not a female. And yeah, as he goes ahead and tries to hit Bell, Bell's armor yet again deflects the axe which the adventurer had. And that's when Bell simply uses his greatsword and impales him through the chest. After that, he hears blood splatter behind him. He turns around and he sees that the first adventurer has also been killed by Eyes. And meanwhile, yeah, about most of the Loki familia's soldiers were killed off, with the White Dragon soldiers losing 7 men in total. And after that, as Loki familia was about to retreat, yeah, from behind them just fire and light magic can be heard. And seen also, as all of them get fried up by fire magic and impaled by light shards. And after that, the commanding officer of the soldiers of the Ice Emperor Dragon, well, they thank Bell and Ice for their help. And well, after they see that they're Dragonoids, because of, well, simply put, their horns, their tails, and Ice's wings, they immediately bow down, because Dragonoids are royalty to them, and every single one of the soldiers which were under the command of the dragons were fiercely loyal to them. And that's when simply Bell tells them to rise up, as Bell then tells them that they should probably go towards the northern realms, because that's where quite a bit of the soldiers of the previous dragons are even located at, with them joining forces with the Thor and with Thor's and Odin's familias, along with every single other god which didn't support the other gods as they killed the dragons. And yeah, that's when the 23 soldiers and their commanding officer simply wave goodbye, and again expressing their gratitude to Bell and Ice. And just like that, Bell and Ice simply, well, they don't go towards the Sultanate. Instead, they're a bit more fascinated by, well, this dungeon. And they go in it. They see that monsters, the ants and the dogs, or the wolves, just keep respawning. And yeah, as they kill them, all of them, or at least a good amount of them, keep dropping magic crystals. As Bell and I simply take those crystals and absorb them. If you guys are wondering at what levels Eyes and Bell currently are, both of them are, well, level 4. Although the adventurers which they fought, which were level 4, are, well, quite weak. Like, they just got to level 4. But on the other hand, Eyes and Bell essentially had all of their stats in the SS rankings. That being that they went over 900. Or at least most of them. As Eyes' agility was SSS, being 1200 or so. And yeah, as they enter the dungeon, or as they were currently going through the dungeon, killing all the monsters, getting EXP and all that, they come up, they see essentially a hole in the ground. As they do, they jump through it. They essentially are falling for a good couple of seconds when they hit the ground. And they essentially fell down like 70 or so feet. Now, as they keep going forward, they see no monsters, although that's when they come into essentially a gigantic chamber. And as they're wondering what exactly this is, they hear rumbling, has the giant statue, which was in the middle of the room, well, starts shaking. And after some time, the stone, which was essentially covering it, starts falling apart. As it is revealed that it's a cyclops, which just broke through it essentially, and a cyclops which was made into a golem. Now, this cyclops is rather large at the fact that it's over 10 meters tall, with bell and eyes, with both of them are, since they are Dragonoids, and I'm not sure if I said this, but since both of them are Dragonoids, they're actually a lot taller than most humans, with both of them being close to, 3 meters, with Bell being 2.92 meters tall and Eyes being 2.89 meters tall. And yeah, now as they begin fighting, the Cyclops. And now, as Bell goes ahead and tries to essentially cut through it, his blade actually, stops in the middle of the Cyclops' head. With Bell being, fairly confused because this blade is supposed to cut through anything. And that's when he gets hit by the Cyclops' club, essentially getting launched into the wall, creating not so a dent, much like, instead of making a dent in the wall, he creates a proper crater. And yeah, his Eyes sees this, she takes her, essentially, superior speed than the Cyclops and goes ahead to, stab its eye. As she does succeed somewhat, the only problem was, as she does stab it in its eye, and essentially the eye gets destroyed. The only problem is, now the Cyclops isn't a Cyclops anymore. His 8 more eyes are simply created on its face. Something which Eyes wasn't expecting, and she gets swatted away like, a fly by the Cyclops. And now, as Belle is getting back up, he simply sees that Eyes is on the ground, and before she can dodge, the Cyclops essentially stomps on her with its foot. And yeah, after Belle sees that, he gets a tiny bit pissed off, because he actually thinks that Eyes is now in danger, because that Cyclops is, I'm just gonna say right now, it's a level 5 monster. It's like at, essentially, how to put it, it's at medium, like it's almost at level 6. And as Bell sees that, he essentially runs forward faster than he ever has, and yet again, he chops off essentially the foot, which was an Eyes. And as the Cyclops is now off balance as it goes to one leg, or gets to its knees, or one knee to be exact, as Belle looks at Eyes. And it's not good, with both of her wings are essentially scrambled, with both of them being broken up, and Eyes actually bleeding rather a lot. And after that, the Cyclops uses its hand, its, reach, to try and essentially squash Belle. Although that's when the Cyclops feels something. Immense bloodlust. And just as the gigantic, essentially, a tree trunk, or rather thick tree, essentially as the Cyclops tries to, punch, or that is squash Belle with it. That's when he hears something, or more accurately, he doesn't hear anything, except the cracking of wood, as Belle, with one of his arms, is holding the Cyclops' entire, simply put, club and his hand in one place, with one arm. And Dragonoids can also gain new abilities. And the ability which Belle had just gained is, yeah, he actually gained two. The first one was Bloodlust. He can essentially, his Bloodlust is more effective at scaring away monsters which are weaker than him. And then the second ability, which is quite powerful, Berserk. Yeah, simply put, Bell enters in a Berserk state. When he is in this type of state, his strength is modified by 200%. His speed, however, is lowered by 50%, although his endurance and his strength is increased by 200%. And yeah, simply put, Bell takes the club which the Cyclops was holding, and yeah, uses it on the Cyclops itself, as the main part of it actually gets, well, destroyed. Bell jumps up and yeah, as the Cyclops' mouth opens, yeah, Bell takes this gigantic club and just shoves it in the Cyclops' mouth. Yeah, and after that, Bell jumps yet again, essentially using himself as the hammer to a nail, and the nail is the club, and yeah, the plank is the Cyclops. Yeah, as Bell does that, the Cyclops turns into dust. As simply put, Bell had just, well, struck the club which was broken in half, as it had its essentially the sharper end of it in the Cyclops' mouth. And as he does that, the Cyclops' throat is, well, simply put, it has a rather large hole in the back of his neck, as the Cyclops simply dies, turns into dust. And the mana crystal which drops is rather gigantic, with Bell barely being able to, with the magical crystal which drops, is essentially as large as Bell's entire hand. And yeah, Bell goes to the magical crystal and tries to pick it up and to take it over to Eyes. The only problem is, as soon as he does pick it up, the magical energy from the Cyclops essentially goes into him, but not all of it, as Bell currently needs to fight well, actually no. As Bell fought against a much stronger opponent than him, that being the Cyclops, he rises up to, well, level 5. And yeah, as he takes the remaining, essentially magical energy which is inside the shard, he tries to heal Eyes with this. And he does somewhat succeed, healing Eyes, well, that is, he's able to heal Eyes' wing, that being only one. The other one is still, well, rather broken, and she's also bleeding internally. And yeah, Bell picks up Eyes and then immediately starts running towards the exit. And yeah, as he essentially goes through it, he immediately tries to go to the nearby, well, town. But on his way there, he notices something. He notices a hut in the woods. Now, at first, he doesn't, well, take any sort of notice to it, because it's just a hut in the middle of the woods. But that's when someone yells for him to stop. As Bell turns around, essentially letting off his bloodlust, he sees a frail old man, as he has, well, a walking stick with him, essentially a staff. As Bell simply tells him what you want, as this old man tells him this. The girl you are carrying seems to be in dire need of medical attention. I can heal her if you take her to my hut. So come on now, she will not survive until you get to the nearby town. As Bell simply says, fine, but try anything and I'll break your skull. As the old man simply laughs on this and tells him, don't worry, I will not strike anything, Your Majesty. Because Bell simply says, oh great. Because he actually didn't essentially hide his tail and horns. Which is something that they can do with essentially transformation when. But yeah, as he enters the house or the hut, he sees a bunch of medical herbs everywhere, essentially potions and all that. And that's when this once odd looking man simply, well, starts growing. As Belle looks at him, as from an old man, he is now, well, essentially a middle-aged man with leaves all around him and also a green, essentially, tunic. And yeah, this man is actually a druid, as he simply tells Belle that he's going to, well, try his best to heal her. As the druid then simply tells Belle to go outside. Well, actually no, he tells Belle to go ahead and help him with some of the potions he needs, along with the proper medical herbs. As Belle does this. And yeah, after 2 hours of doing this, Ice's wing currently is essentially completely covered in medical herbs, which essentially have bits of healing potion on it, along with essentially magical crystal dust. As essentially Belle went out and just killed several monsters, put them in a carefully gather them into a bag without touching them, because if he touches them he's going to absorb the magical energy inside of it. And as he takes this several dozen smaller magical crystals to the druid begins to essentially make them into a fine dust. And after that, he sprays that all over. He sprays that magical crystal dust on every single wound which Ice has. And yeah, as that happens, the druid simply tells Belle that he is going to need to wait for at least a day for this to take effect, with Belle simply stating, fine, but this will heal her, right? With the druid simply stating, whose name is Zephyr, as Zephyr simply says, yes, she should be fine by tomorrow, although she will still have quite a few bruises on her. With Belle simply telling him that's alright, as long as she doesn't die. As the druid simply asks Belle, so if I can ask you a question, are you two, like, married or something, because of how much you care about her? As Belle then simply goes ahead and says, no, we're just partners, we're currently fighting together and traveling together, and that's it, nothing more. With the druid simply going, keep your secrets, young man. As Belle, essentially, yeah, since his personality is quite a bit different than one in the anime, but he still sort of gets flustered, because he does think that Ice is beautiful and strong, essentially the two main attributes which Belle likes in his woman. And yeah, as essentially the druid goes to sleep because it's rather late, as Belle simply gets a chair and then sits, well, right next to where Ice is laying. And yeah, unbeknownst to Belle, Ice sort of heard everything he said, because she was half awake. And yeah, let's just say that Ice as she falls asleep yet again, she has a good dream because of what Belle said. Because Belle also said that he cares about her quite a lot. And all of that. And anyways, the next day, as Belle wakes up, he sees that Ice essentially wakes up at the same time as he does. as Belle asks her, is she fine? Does she feel pain anywhere? With Eyes responding, no, not exactly. I'm feeling a bit strained on my wings, but that's about it. As Belle says, good. And as they were speaking, they wake up the druid, who simply goes to them and says, you two are awake. Good. So, how are you feeling? As Eyes tells me again, this time to the druid, that she is feeling fine, and that she also thanks the druid for helping her. As the druid says, the only thing I did was apply it correctly to you. I didn't have any sort of medical herbs here which would help you, or hell, even magical crystals. That was all guarded by Bell, so you should be thanking him more than me. But anyways, it seems that you're fine now, so if you want to, you can be on your way. As Ice and Bell both thank him now. And yeah, that's when they simply go off. And they finally, they're essentially walking now, simply as they're currently walking in silence with Belle and Ice both thinking in their minds, essentially, oh boy, this is awkward. But yeah, as they essentially keep walking like this for the next 20 or so minutes, Belle finally, that is Ice, finally says something to Belle. That something being, look over there. Because, as Belle essentially goes up the hill where Ice was, he sees it. The fortress city of, Hephaestus. As they have arrived to the entrance to the Middle Realm. And just like that, I will be ending this video off here. I hope all of you guys and gals have enjoyed the video, and also I hope you have a great day. With that, I'll be signing off.